Good afternoon to school leaders, key personnel, fellow educators, and HQ partners. My name is Jeremy, and I would like to start first by introducing my team members. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here. I feel supported because my school leader is actually here. Before I begin, some context setting. You may be wondering, why did we choose to partner with ETD for this ProjecTask pilot? In my school, one of our key strategic thrusts is to empower our students to learn for life. So we believe that self-direction is important. And we feel that there are opportunities to develop our students' self-direction in the area of self-discipline, motivation, and management. I will link how the ProjecTask template can actually help your students to develop these areas in my later slides. Coincidentally, we were actually here as audience, not at this venue. We actually attended last year's Classroom of the Future sharing event. And when we heard about ProjecTask, we were excited. And because prior to this year, we have our in-house learner progress tracker that we have been trying to see how best to help our students be more self-directed in monitoring their own coursework. And the tool that ProjecTask can be found in is none other than our SLS. It is a portal that our students and our staff are familiar with. If you have not gone into SLS to look for ProjecTask, I will share with you where you can find it on my last slide. We feel that ProjecTask is able to develop our students to take greater ownership because it is a self-monitoring tool, as you have seen from the video earlier on. Not only does it help students, it actually helps teachers to save time because teachers can have a very quick overview on all their students' coursework progress, depending on how they design the template. And ProjecTask also allows AFL. Teachers can provide students to close their learning gaps. So at Springfield, because I'm teaching design and technology, I piloted this with my Sec 3 NA D&T students. We wanted them to experience how ProjecTask works, so we actually guided them to update their own progress for one of their weighted assessment component. So in this example that you see here on the screen, the teachers, we decided the main task and the subtasks. We dedicated lesson time to guide the students to update their status whenever they have completed or whenever they are still working on certain subtasks or whenever they are stuck and need teachers' help or advice, they could log in via the SLS lessons and update the Google link found in the SLS lessons. So teachers, when we see that certain students are indicating they need help in certain areas, it's quite easy for us to go to them and to close the gap. Similarly, for teachers, it gives us a quick and convenient way to give direct update to the students via the color coding from the drop-down menu, and this is highly customizable. You could change the color, you can change the words. It's really quite convenient once you get the hang of it. What we liked about this ProjecTask template is there's also a column that features deadline. Students being students, they tend to be forgetful. So having a deadline for specific tasks really helps our student to remain on task. And it's especially useful for students who missed some of your lessons or tend to be forgetful. And not forgetting the remarks column, if teachers would like to provide specific feedback for each of the subtasks, you may do so using the remarks column. We felt that if the students are introduced to this set of project management skills at Sec 3, it will be helpful and it will be much less stressful for teachers guiding them the following year in the GCE coursework. For our Sec 4 graduating students, this was what we adapted from the learning from using the ProjecTask template. So what you see here is an entry for a student. At one glance, let's say you have a class of 20 students in your coursework. At one glance on one collated page, you could actually see which students are making progress and which students are slightly behind time. So this is very useful for us as for myself. Before I go into the lesson the day before, I could have a quick review of where are all my respective students' coursework progress, and it helps me plan which areas to guide them to close the gap for subsequent lessons. Right, for our Sec 3, as I mentioned earlier, as they are first-time user, we actually use the ProjecTask as a bite-sized activity, so not the entire full coursework, but only the research portion of the coursework, and the duration that we trial the ProjecTask was in the month of February, so that happens to be the weighted assessment 1 component. However, for our graduating students, they would need to use it to update and keep track of the deadlines for all components of their GCE coursework. So we use it as a monitoring tool, and also for students to see how are they progressing along with other peers. Some of the challenges that our teachers and myself as well that we face, the initial ProjecTask template is the subtask is actually not filled up. So just like any digital tool that any of us are using for the first time, definitely we will need to dedicate some time to play around with what the template is capable of doing, like how many subtasks do we want, how many main tasks would we like, how to set an achievable deadline that's not too difficult, that our students will not give up easily. But once we are more familiar with it, it's just a matter of duplicating multiple roles for as many students as you need. Some of the challenges that our students face, students being students, sometimes the more mischievous ones, they would try to change cells that they were not told to change. Some of them would try to go to their classmate's cell and make some changes. So one of my colleagues, an NFS colleague, she tried cell protection. So you can do cell protection, however, she shared that it is quite time intensive. So for students who are using ProjecTask for the first time, if we want to use ProjecTask effectively, I think Madam Lee shared earlier, we can't just throw them a tool and expect them to pick up automatically. So careful lesson time needs to be put aside for the first few lessons when you are trying out the ProjecTask template for your students. And the challenge for us is to make it a routine. So once the students develop the habit to go in to update the progress, maybe for the first few lessons, you might have to dedicate considerable amount of time to ensure that all your students are using the template correctly. Once they are familiar and they develop a routine, it will be a breeze. Some feedback that we collated from our students, the visual learners love the color coding. So at a glance, they will aim for all green. Green is good to go. So they like that part, and they like that for each of the subtasks, teachers can provide specific feedback to them. One of the students suggested, because we have many subtasks and it's all words, could we include some images to help them better distinguish one task from the other? So that would be one of our considerations for next year. Feedback from teachers. As I mentioned earlier, it really helps us to save time. Only the initial setup will take time. Eventually, the monitoring time, it really cuts down on a lot. Some of us also go on the termly breaks. After we come back from the termly break, we might also need a quick overview to refresh ourselves. How are our students progressing along for different components of the coursework? And we do see students taking greater ownership once they get the hang of using it. So the students will need to have self-discipline to update the progress faithfully. The more motivated students can look at what's coming. If they make good progress, they can actually use the time to work on the other components of the coursework without the need to wait for their peers. And the deadline that we provide in the project task really helps them to work towards completing the project so they can better self-manage their own time. So you may ask, after Springfield Secondary share our experience with ProjecTask, what's in it for my school? Should I try it? Yes, definitely, because once you set up the ProjecTask template, it really helps to cut down on the time that you need to check on students' progress. It is an efficient feedback loop. You could also leverage on NLCs within your clusters, for example, to do sharing on the use of ProjecTask. You could start small. You could start with a particular level or stream, and once you are familiar with it, you can roll it out for an entire level. For our school, we are going to launch this for all upper sec art, D&T, and NFS classes next year. Finally, and also as mentioned in the video at the beginning of my presentation, it is just not pertaining to coursework subjects. In fact, if you are on committees and you have projects and programs with tasks, subtasks, deadlines, ProjecTask can be used not only for students but for staff as well. Other areas that you could use ProjecTask would be SIL, VIA. I hope that my sharing has piqued your curiosity. So as promised, if you have not gone into SLS, you can try to log in later, go to the MOE library resources, and under the search word you key in ProjecTask, you will be able to see the template. With that, I've come to the end of my sharing. Thank you.